In this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, we talk a little bit about the circus, the county fair, the country fair, the Las Vegas casino. But in reality, it's just Congress. That's right. We're going to dive into a few things that have been spat out the last few days. As well, we kind of look way back in the way back machine and look at the assault weapons ban of 94 and see what really changed. And you know what? Let's look at that a little bit more. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, episode 248, The Country Circus. Enjoy. All right, gang, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. It's been a wild couple weeks. Did we miss anything? Did something crazy happen since the last time we've been here? A couple things. Obviously, the whole Trump assassination attempt, the zoo that's been going on in Washington, tons of crazy stuff. And I've been sick. The whole reason you haven't had an episode last week, I give you excuses all the time, right? Might as well say this is an every other week podcast. I've been sick. Maybe you can hear it in my voice. I've been unable to record anything. I've been exceptionally tired. Haven't been able to eat. I cough, and I cough a lot. So you might see some weird edits at weird times in this show because I might get into a coughing fit. And, yeah, I've been to the doctor, and guess what? They have no idea what I have. So that adds to the excitement. In fact, a couple people have said maybe I contracted some weird disease from the hotel experience that I talked about in the last episode. And that might be true. I actually did bring that up to the doctor when we were talking about what may have ailed me. And I'm still not convinced that I haven't contracted some weird viral disorder from that wonderful hotel in Casper, Wyoming. If you're going to stay somewhere, maybe just bypass Casper. If you're from Casper, Wyoming, I'm not sorry. Your town kind of sucks. But I love you anyways. Anyways, let's get to the content of the show, shall we? So, despite what you might think, I love being around people. I do. I'm weird that way, right? I love the feel. Like, it's just a different feeling when you're around a group of people, especially people that think the same way. That was why I loved going to GunCon. That's why I love going to SHOT Show. It's just I'm around people. I kind of get this vibe from them, and I really enjoy it. Though I am kind of I'm kind of an introvert in a way too. It's weird. I know I'm weird. I get it. But some of the things I really like where there's lots of people, I really like Las Vegas. I really do. Maybe that's a guilty pleasure, right? I don't gamble. I have. And in total, I think I've lost like $2 all the way because I went in there with a commitment. I think I had $5. I'm like, sure, I'll try it. And I was up to like $25. And then just like always, they get you, right? They get you comfortable and they take it away. The thing about Las Vegas, think about it, right? It's one big lie. You go into these casinos, everything there is developed to entice the senses. Everything. You got cute little cocktail waitresses offering free drinks, the lights, the noise, people cheering. There's no windows on the outsides of any of the casinos, and that's on purpose, right? It's designed to suck you in, to appeal to all of your senses, and to make you forget what's really going on, okay? That's the thing about Las Vegas. Again, though, I really enjoy going to Las Vegas. I'm only there for SHOT Show. That's the only time I go to Vegas anymore is when I go to SHOT Show. By the way, SHOT Show 25 is going to be off the hook because it's going to be a good time. The first time I went to Vegas was for our anniversary, my anniversary, our 5th anniversary. That was almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago to be exact. And that was my wife's first experience of being outside of what we in Southeast Idaho call the bubble. Those who know what I mean. You get outside of the bubble, which is basically from, let's say, almost Yellowstone National Park on the north, the northeast part of Idaho, the little boot part, all the way down to, let's just say, probably St. George. I would say that's the bubble, right? It's just a different world. And those who've been inside the bubble, they understand it. You know what I'm talking about, right? You get it. That's the bubble. Once you get outside the bubble, it's a whole different world. And that's just the way it is. Anyway, some of the other places I really like to be around people are like the county fair. Like, I love the county fair. And it's the same kind of thing, right? Like, you go to the fair, and maybe it's not so much, I don't know if you guys live in big cities, it might not be the same, but for us simple country folk, when you get to the fair, it's kind of like a miniature Las Vegas, right? You go, there's these people, they're excited, it's usually fall, so it's not terribly hot, but it's warm enough, you don't have to wear a jacket or whatever. There's, if you're a single dude, there's always a lady to say hello to. Or vice versa, I guess, whatever floats your boat. But then you got like the food vendors, and everything looks so good on the menu. The smells, it just draws everything in. Like, it entices to your senses, right? It's the exact same concept. And then the rides, right? It's so much fun to get on the rides. They're way too expensive. And you walk down the alleys or whatever they call them, where you have like the carnies, right? The dude's trying to suck your money in to try and win a stupid puppet or whatever, right? A plush doll or tokens to get a 50-cent toy that's not worth 50 cents, but you spent $15 to try and win it. It's the exact same thing, right? They all entice to your senses, and they attack your pride if you're a dude. Like, yeah, I can hit those bottles with this baseball or whatever. Right? It's the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And it is built around tugging to your senses, deceiving you from something that's real, and convincing you that it's something else. That's all it is. Whether it be fair food or the slot machines. It's a big lie. Right? Now, let's go back to the recent activities of our country. So, President Trump, there was an assassination attempt. Now, I'm not saying it was rigged or faked or whatever. There's a lot of people saying, yeah, it wasn't a bullet. He had the knife or something. He cut his ear when he went up to feel his ear. I don't believe that. I really do believe that he was hit by a bullet. I do. But there's a lot of things going on in that story that don't make sense. Now, I'm not saying it's conspiracy. I'm not saying that the CIA had anything to do with that. But I may not be saying that either. I don't know. It's a big lie. Everything we see is designed to manipulate our senses into thinking something that it's not. Or maybe just skewed a little bit. Everything we watch and hear and see and listen to or whatever is not always exactly as it seems. So, why do I even bring this up? And no, it's not about the Trump assassination attempt. It's not about that. It's not about Biden dropping out of the race. It's not about the democratic process being subverted to where Democrat voters don't get to primary Kamala Harris, and she just happens to be the nominee without any democratic process happening. I think that's kind of ironic anyways, but that's not what this show's about. But what it is about is the carnival that takes place any time a mass event, a mass casualty event. And yeah, that the Trump assassination is going to be published as a mass shooting because there were so many people there, and there was 4 victims. And I want to say, I don't think his family listens, but the firefighter, his name just slipped my head. All this cough medicine and whatever is kind of messing with my brain. Corey Caperton, I can't. You know who I'm talking about. I'd screw it up if I tried to say his name. But my heart goes out to his family. He died a hero. He was shielding his daughters from incoming fire, which nobody should have to deal with in a free country. What happened that day was totally third world. It should not happen in a free republic. Those things do happen in democracies. If you look at other, democracies across the world, but in a republic, that stuff shouldn't happen. And hopefully stuff gets resolved. But the circus that took place after the fact were all the hearings. Now, again, things that we hear and see aren't always as they appear. Now, what these hearings should have been about is getting down to the bottom of the mistakes that were made, and there were many mistakes that were made, or if there was a conspiracy. That's what these hearings should be about. And if people actually honored the oath that they take every time they go to these hearings, we would be able to get to the bottom of these things much, much quicker. But they're not always as they seem. Let's take a look.
Let's talk about it, because I've seen statistics that show that we could be saving lives now if we ban these weapons of war from being able to buy it at the local store down the street. I mean, we just can't continue to allow this to happen.
An honest disagreement we have about the Second Amendment. There are some people who think the Second Amendment means you've got the right to arm yourself with whatever weaponry you need to overthrow the government of the United States. And we reject that as a false interpretation of the Second Amendment and a false interpretation of the Constitution. We can ban assault weapons. We did it back in 1994. It dramatically reduced these mass shootings. And when that ban was lifted, the mass shootings went up through the roof again, and we've shown it. And so just like we're demanding real answers and real action from the Secret Service, let us demand real action and real answers from ourselves about the nightmare of mass gun violence, which puts America into a category all its own when you compare us to the countries in the European Union or Canada or other similarly situated countries. There's nothing like what we're going through. So we've got to act on the Secret Service to protect ourselves against political violence, and we've got to act as a Congress to protect ourselves against AR-15 violence in America.
The individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States? What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
On one particular side of the aisle don't really want to talk about, like AR-15s and access to them by a 20-year-old, or anybody for that matter. Presumably, Director Cheadle, the ubiquity of weapons, guns in America, especially assault weapons or semi-automatic weapons, that's helped your job and the mission of your agencies, right? It's made it less complicated. Isn't that true?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question.
Real simple. More guns, especially dangerous ones, have made your job protecting people easier. Is that not right?
I think from every...
Director Cheatham, this is simple English. More guns, do they make your job more complicated or less complicated in protecting these 36 clients and visiting heads of state and heads of government that come to Washington?
I think the Secret Service needs to take into account...
I didn't ask that. I'm sorry. I asked a simple question, which deserves a simple answer. The ubiquity of guns, dangerous weapons in America like AR-15s, has that made your job, that is to say the mission of the Secret Service, easier or more difficult? We stipulate it's always difficult. Again, this is a simple one. Does the ubiquity of guns make your job easier or more difficult today? Please answer the question. You're the head of the Secret Service. You're speaking on behalf of 8,000 members who put their lives on the line. We just had a failure by your own admission Do guns make your job easier or harder? A 20-year-old had access to his father's AR-15 and got on top of a roof within 500 yards or feet of the podium. And I'm asking you, did the availability of that AR-15, which is replicated all across America, make your job harder or easier?
I want to discuss one of the roots of political violence, guns. For years, Republicans, including a member of this committee, have introduced legislation and amendments to repeal or block the District of Columbia gun violence protection laws, including its bans on assault weapons and large-capacity magazines. The shooter at the Trump rally used the mass shooter's gun of choice, an assault weapon, specifically an AR-15 style rifle, and presumably a large capacity magazine, which is defined in D.C. as a magazine that can hold more than 10 bullets.
Think of Buffalo, New York at a supermarket where a racist gunman killed 10 shoppers with an AR. In El Paso, AK-47 style assault rifle killed 22. In Florida, in Parkland, Florida, 17 students and teachers murdered, again with an AR. In Pittsburgh, at a place of faith, Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 murdered. And don't get me about Newton, Connecticut, which still breaks my heart. 26 murdered, including 20 elementary school children. This year in Michigan, we've had, Mr. Chair, 2 mass shootings. 21 shot in Detroit. One of the most horrific shootings we've seen. 2 killed at a splash pad in Rochester Hills, Michigan. 8 shot there. Again, an assault weapon used. But the difference here is the former president gets a hearing in his attempt to assassinate, but our residents don't get a hearing about mass shootings, about gun violence in our country. You know, Mr. Chair, I ask this wholeheartedly. You know, they don't have Secret Service to protect them. They don't. I don't have these mass agencies protecting our kids in the schools or the supermarket, movie theaters, or going to a block party in Detroit. I don't have that. We don't have that. But I can't believe we're just going to focus on that and not the fact that we're hearing yet again in the headlines a 20-year-old young man having access to an assault weapon, a weapon of war. Many of my veterans say they have to be trained to use. But he can get it. Wasn't safely stored by the parent, grabbing that gun. And innocent lives were lost. Director, I know you got asked about this. And I think it's important, though, you know, for us to hear this. But how difficult is your job when there's such easy access to assault weapons in the streets?
Yes or no? Do you believe that stricter controls on the availability of assault weapons would make it easier for the Secret Service to fulfill its missions of protecting public officials? Certainly, but do assault weapons make it easier or harder for you to do your job?
I think that any weapon makes it difficult for us to do our job.
I want to follow up on Representative Connolly's question, in which he asked about guns, and you were not willing to commit that makes your job harder. This is not about the Second Amendment. If there were over 400 million guns on the streets, if all of those guns were machine guns, would that make your job harder to protect people?
Again, I think weapons that are out there.
If all of those guns were rocket-propelled grenades, would that make your job harder?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Perfect. This is not a trick question. Thank you. Okay. I won't ask the other 15 things I was going to do. I was going to do drone strikes, but it's okay. So, that's all we were asking. It creates a challenging environment. It has nothing to do with the Second Amendment or people's rights, but it does make your job harder. So, credit to Representative Connolly for asking that question.
Under current D.C. law, D.C. does not recognize concealed carry permits issued by other jurisdictions, but it does issue concealed carry permits to both residents and non-residents. However, D.C. imposes a number of requirements on concealed carry applicants, including suitability, such as not having exhibited a propensity for violence or instability. Moreover, D.C. residents restricts where the guns can be carried, such as a political demonstration near the White House and Naval Observatory or near people under Secret Service protection, provided the permit holder has been given notice. This week, the House is expected to consider the fiscal year 2025 Financial Services and General Government Appropriations Bill. This Republican drafted bill would allow an individual with a permit to carry a concealed handgun issued by a state or territory to carry a concealed handgun in D.C., regardless of that jurisdiction's permit requirements. A Republican has filed an amendment to that provision to allow such an individual to carry a magazine of any size with that handgun. In short, the pending bill and amendment would allow any person with a carry permit issued by another jurisdiction to carry a concealed handgun with a magazine of any size in any location in the District of Columbia. The Secret Service is responsible for protecting a large number of people and facilities in D.C. Director Cheadle, would Secret Service protectees in D.C. be safer or less safe if people who have exhibited a propensity for violence or instability could carry a concealed handguns in D.C.? Would Secret Service protectees in D.C. be safer or less safe if people in D.C. could carry concealed handguns with large capacity magazines? Would Secret Service protectees in D.C. be safer or less safe if more people could carry handguns in D.C.?
I think, again, as I stated, ma'am, we want to make sure that we provide a safe environment for all of our protectees, and whatever measures we would need to put in place for a secure site, we would do so.
In the space in which this event took place, it was an open carry space. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I hail from the state of Texas, and interestingly enough, I was serving in the state house right after there was a mass shooting in El Paso. We had an opportunity to do right by our citizens in Texas, but we did not. Instead, they passed permitless carry. And what my colleagues kept trying to get you to answer, because we want to come up with solutions, we don't want to keep pointing the finger. And right now, you've got a bunch of fingers that are pointed at you. But our job is to solve problems for the American people. And to be perfectly honest, the numbers are clear. I think almost every major law enforcement agency come forward and say that they were against permitless carry because they said that their jobs would be made more difficult. Unfortunately, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the state of Texas decided that they would ignore those warnings, and they passed the law instead. And right after they passed that law, we ended up with Uvalde. And we heard the stories of those officers that were scared to go in and save those babies because of the firearm in which that, in that case, 18-year-old had in his hands. They also were given an opportunity to say, hey, raise the age and make it to where at least you have to be 21 before you can possess this type of weapon. And they chose not to. And we have the facts. It shows, and I'll enter this into the record as well if there is no objection, deaths from firearms keep climbing in Texas decades after lawmakers began weakening gun regulations. That is from the Texas Tribune.
And yet we allow AR-15s to be purchased with abandon, promiscuously, all over the country. People can just go out and get an assault weapon. And the distinguished gentlelady from Michigan was right. We have a hearing when it affects the President of the United States, but on all the other days of the year, we don't have a hearing about it. And I think it is because we also have to get to the bottom of the larger problem, which is that the whole country is living like this in fear and in terror of assault weapon attacks in movie theaters, churches, synagogues, mosques, supermarkets, Walmarts, any place where an audience or a public gathers. And the worst was in Las Vegas, where a gunman got up on a roof and then just mowed down 60 people below him and wounded hundreds and hundreds of other people. So we've got to deal with that problem. We've got to move as swiftly as we can to deal with the problems of the Secret Service, but the broader problem is still there. And I just wish to the heavens that our colleagues that could get together on the question of presidential security against an AR-15 attack could get together on the question of public security against an AR-15 attack, because all of us are vulnerable. All of our families are in danger by this, and the rest of the world doesn't live this way. And we have to look to see how uniquely strange it is that we allow 20-year-olds to access AR-15s, weapons of mass destruction, and show up in public places.
It's frustrating, right? When all you hear is the left and some of the right, honestly, grandstanding about the assault weapon used, when that has nothing to do with the hearings whatsoever, right? What should have been talked about is Miss Director of the Secret Service. How did this dude get on the roof? How come nobody saw him? Why did it take so long, almost 60 minutes or whatever it was, from the time of him being seen on the roof, being relayed to a local policeman, and then relayed to the Secret Service, and interception take place? Why did this take so long? Now, could it have been nefarious? Sure, I don't know. The longer they wait and the longer they take and the more BS they share in these hearings, the more wild and plausible some of these conspiracy theories. Told you, way too much cough medicine. The crazier these conspiracy theories seem to become, and the more real they become to a lot of folks. I don't know. I don't know the answer. And honestly, we're never going to know the answers. We're never going to know it. Just like the Las Vegas shooting. We're never going to know all of it. Never. Unless, the Savior comes and we all get to see the judgment seats together and we get to hear everybody's guilt. I guess that's when we find out. But seriously, it's such a mess. It's such a mess. Listen to what the FBI director, check out what he said. Now, again, when he was under oath and testifying, it was supposed to be about what are you discovering about what's happening, what's taking place. But he chose to do this. Listen to this.
The shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant, though, to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe. Because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have a scope?
I believe so, but as I sit here right now, I don't remember.
Okay. You mentioned about 2 hours before the incident that he'd had a drone and he was...
So what do? They create a boogeyman, right? Just like the Secret Service hearing. And let me, even though I think Cheadle is a worthless director. I wouldn't say she's a worthless person, but she was not a very good director, obviously. To her credit, she avoided the whole Second Amendment assault weapon, whatever, right? She avoided all that because it wasn't germane to the hearing. She doesn't make policy. She doesn't define what an assault weapon is, right? So to her credit, she avoided those BS questions. But the grandstanding from the liberal left, and yes, some on the right, even though it may not be in that hearing, is it's the assault weapons fault. It's the AR-15's fault. They're creating this boogeyman argument about the AR-15. So then that brings us, I just had a big coughing fit, so now my voice is kind of weird. But I edited it out so you didn't have to hear me. So that brings us to these assault weapons bans, right? They're convinced that a ban on assault weapons will fix the world. Everybody will obey this law if we just make them illegal, right? Well, we've talked about in depth, I believe, I can't remember some of the stuff we talked about, but I'm pretty sure we went in depth of the most recent assault weapons ban, which covers everything semi-automatic. Everything. Think about that. What guns are semi-auto? Almost everything. I mean, you can still buy revolvers and pump actions and bolt actions, sure. But everything, every gun collector or gun purchaser, I bet you if you looked in every one of their gun safes, they would have at least one, but probably multiple semi-automatics. Now, you think, well, with the assault weapons ban, they're just talking about ARs like they did in 94. No, not in this new, most recent version. It's everything semi-automatic, from your Glocks to your semi-automatic bird shotguns to your AR-15s, everything. Anything that uses the inertia of the previous fired round to cycle and load the next round. Okay? That's what, a 60%, 70% of all the firearms on the market? Probably more, honestly. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's not what they say it is. Kind of like going to the casino. The casino is the one that wins, right? Just like these assault weapons bans. Now, that made me wonder, right? Let's go back to 1994. Okay, I want to share with you a couple things. I've pulled up I've pulled up the assault weapons ban of 94. Actually, I didn't pull up the assault weapons ban, but I pulled up a report written in 2004 about the efficacy of the assault weapons ban. I thought this was kind of interesting. Now, I downloaded this. I downloaded this report. I'm going to give you guys a hint, right? A little bit of inside baseball. Whenever you're doing research on anything firearms related, I strongly encourage you, especially if it's in a PDF form or anything like that, create a file and download that document onto your computer, because things have a way of disappearing. So I happen to download this report onto my computer. I wish I would have done that with the CDC's data on defensive gun use, because it's gone. You can't get that online anymore. It vanished. I wish I would have downloaded it. I actually might have it downloaded on one of my other computers. I need to go check it out. Anyway, let's look at this report. I'm obviously not going to read the whole thing. It's quite long. It's over 100 pages. We're not going to go through 100 pages. Let me do this here. Let's see. I got to find the right thing. So I'm kind of off the wagon here because it's been so long since I've done this. Let me scroll up so you can see what this is called. Ready? Check this out. All right. An update assessment of the federal assault weapons ban, the impacts of gun markets and gun violence, 1994 to 2003. Okay, I want to scroll down here. So we're not going to read the preface or all this stuff, but I do want to see. I highlighted a few things I wanted to share with you. Okay, I want to do this actually. It's wrong button, Steve-O, wrong button. There we go. I should have, what would have been great, a great podcast idea is maybe actually have all my video stuff set up before I get to this point. There we go. For those of you listening and not watching what I'm doing, I'm doing something I should have done before. I did all this other stuff and turn on the camera so while I'm reading, we can have a face-to-face conversation. But alas, I'm special. I'm going to make this a little bigger too here so you can see this. Okay. Is that better, kids? Can you see it now for those kids in the back? Can you see it? All right. So this is, like I said, we're just going to visit a few of these bullet points. and have a conversation about it. Again, this is from the 1994 assault weapons ban. This is a report done post ban expiration. At the time, there were upwards of 1.5 million privately owned assault weapons in the United States and nearly 25 million guns equipped with LCMs. So that's an acronym for large capacity magazines, or standard capacity, as the rest of us call them. Gun industry sources estimate that there were 25 million pre-ban large capacity magazines available in the U.S. as of 1995. An additional 4.7 million pre-ban large capacity magazines were imported into the country from 1995 to 2000. So there was almost 30 million magazines, let's just say that, as of 2000. Was the largest number in 1999. Okay, so there was a lot, right? So 25 million, or 1.5 million assault weapons. Now that includes not AR-15s, but that includes AKs, SKSs, anything that fit inside the assault weapons ban of 94, not just ARs. That's everything, 1.5 million. I think we've exceeded that number nowadays. Anyway, thank goodness this thing's sunset, right? Let's scroll down a little bit. The banned guns and magazines were used in up to a quarter. Now, it doesn't say all of them, right? Up to a quarter of gun crimes prior to the ban. Okay, now let's look at these little statistics in this report. Assault weapons were used. Now, this is, remember, they created assault weapons ban because they were so damn dangerous, right, to society. Assault weapons are used in only a small fraction of gun crimes prior to the ban. Okay, so they made this into a boogeyman in the 90s, that we had to get rid of these guns because they're scary and dangerous. But only a small fraction were used in gun crime. So why did they ban them? About 2% of assault weapons were used in gun crime. 2%. Now, assault weapons is rifles, not handguns. Okay, according to their little pre-ban stuff here. Most of the assault weapons. Oh, look at this. Wait a minute. I was wrong because look, I misread this the first time. Assault weapons were used in a small fraction of gun crimes prior to the ban, about 2% according to most studies, and no more than 8%. Okay. Listen, this is an important sentence right here. Most of the assault weapons used in crime were assault pistols rather than assault rifles. Okay, so that means up to 8% of all gun crimes, most of that 8% on the very generous side of gun crime were handguns, not rifles. Much like the statistics we see today. Interesting. Large capacity magazines were used in crime much more often than assault weapons. It's so stupid. And accounted for 14%, up to 26% of gun crimes used prior to the ban. Assault weapons and other guns with large capacity magazines, again, anything over 10 rounds was what was written in the original assault weapons bill in 94. So anything over 10 rounds. So your Glocks, Smith & Wessons, that kind of thing. Not like, never mind. Not like the new MPs. Those weren't in existence then. Anyway, assault weapons and other guns with large capacity magazines tend to account for a higher share of guns used in murders of police and mass public shootings. Though such incidents are very rare. So, does that seem confusing to you? The up to 8% on very generous, but mostly more likely 2% to their own admission, assault weapons of all kinds, meaning guns that accepted detachable high-capacity magazines or standard capacity in the real world, were used in the gun crime. That was their justification for the assault weapons ban in 94. All right. The ban's success in reducing criminal use of banned guns and magazines has been mixed. Now, this is a report from 2004. Following the implementation of the ban, the share of gun crimes involving assault weapons declined by 17 to 72% across localities examined for this study. Now, they didn't examine nationwide. They only examined Baltimore, Miami, Milwaukee, Boston, St. Louis, and Anchorage. So it wasn't a national study, but it was very focused. Okay? These are all important things to understand statistics and reality. Okay? Based on the data covering all the portions of the 1995 to 2003 post-ban period, this is consistent with patterns found in the national data of guns recovered by police and reported to the ATF. Okay, now listen to this. The decline in the use of all assault weapons has been due primarily to the reduction of the use of assault pistols, not rifles, which are used in crime more commonly than assault rifles. There has not been a clear decline of the use of ARs, though assessments are complicated by the rarity of crimes with these weapons and by the substitution of post-ban rifles that are very similar to the banned AR models. So they went to this huge extent to infringe on the Second Amendment without any real empirical data that reducing gun crime by taking away the assault rifles, or assault weapons in this case, there was no effect. In fact, rifles had very little to do with the gun crime that they were trying to stop anyways. Because of the 2% of gun crime, which they say in the report is rare anyways, of that 2%, a fraction of that was done with rifles. They're scary assault rifles, right? And whatever gun crime was being done, as it said in that last statement I just read, they just used other rifles anyways. There was no real impact. All right. However, the decline in assault weapons was offset throughout the last, at least the late 90s, by a steady rising of use of other guns equipped with large capacity magazines. Now, the magazines become the boogeyman. In the jurisdictions studied, again, Baltimore, Milwaukee, Louisville, and Anchorage. So, again, now they're cherry-picking these statistics to look flowery. The failure to reduce large capacity magazines use has likely been due to the immense stock of exempted or pre-banned magazines, which has been enhanced by recent reports. So the ban did nothing. It didn't help. It didn't do anything. It didn't change anything. Because the ban has, this is the one I wanted you guys to hear, okay? Because the ban has not yet reduced the use of large capacity magazines in crime, we cannot clearly credit the ban with any of the nation's recent drop in gun violence. So it didn't do anything? However, the ban's exemption of millions of pre-banned assault weapons and large capacity magazines ensures the effect of the law would occur only gradually. Those efforts are still unfolding and may not be fully felt for several years into the future. Particularly of foreign and pre-banned large capacity magazines continue to be imported in the U.S. through large numbers. So by their own admission, by their own reports, we don't, rifles were only a small part of that 2% of gun crime. We threw them in there because they look scary. Really, it's the magazines that we're really, really scared of, but we're going to kind of lump them in together with the assault weapons ban. But now in retrospect, it really didn't change anything. People were still going to shoot each other, and it didn't make any difference. So why are they pushing another assault weapons ban? Perhaps, just like going to the casino, it's not quite what it seems. They sell this as a public safety thing, right? Or now it's a health and safety issue, right? We recently saw that the Surgeon General came out and said, guns are a public health crisis and we need to fix that. And then we have a very high profile mass shooting, right? where I think, put on my conspiracy theory hat, I think Donald Trump was supposed to die that day. Because I think if Donald Trump would have died, there would have been a huge cry to get rid of those scary assault weapons. It would have been a lot easier to push the next generation of the assault weapons ban with no sunset. They won't make that mistake again. That's why all those videos I just showed you of all those congressmen crying for change to disarm the public. Interesting. It's kind of like when I go to the carnival or I go to the fair and I try to win that cute little plush Bigfoot doll and I spend all that money only to lose it all and not get the toy. Because they sell you as a possibility of things getting better. But in reality, we lose. There's something else I want to talk about that's been driving me up the wall lately. And I already kind of referred to it a little bit. What's the Pledge of Allegiance say? Let's recite it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, I get, why are we pledging allegiance to a flag? We're not pledging allegiance to a piece of cloth, but what it represents, right? Freedom. A place of refuge. Even though now it seems like a place of refuse. Under who? Under God. God is meant to be a part of our society. God is meant to be a part of our lives. And when we exhume him from our dailies, things change. It creates a vacuum. And a lot of negativity fills that space. But as we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, a representative government meant to have all people have a voice through a republic. It is not a mob rule. I want you to listen very, very closely when you watch these hearings, when you listen to everybody on the left and some people on the right. When they talk about this great nation, they refer to it as a democracy. We are not a democracy. But Steve, it's a democratic republic, blah, blah, blah. We are a republic. I want you to do something. Here's some homework for you guys. Go ahead and look, scour the founding documents. Scour the Constitution, the preamble, the Bill of Rights. Tell me everywhere it states that it is a democracy. Write those down. I promise you it's going to be a really, really short list. In fact, you don't even have to write it down because that phrase does not exist in our founding documents. What does exist is the commentary on a republic. Now, the only reason I know this is because I did it myself, is when you look at where democracy is used in founding documents, or, what's the word? Not comprehensive, but documents from the same time period, what you will find is a lot of references in the Federalist Papers. And almost always, references to democracy are in a negative context. Because a democracy leads to something that's far, far the antithesis of freedom. It leads to socialism. It leads to despotism. It leads to tyranny. Always. There is no freedom in democracy because democracy is 3 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. And I promise you, there are a lot of wolves inside this country that would love to eat the sheep. We are a republic. The only way, what did Benjamin Franklin say when asked, what did you create, Mr. Franklin? He said, a republic if you can keep it. Why did he say that? What does he mean if we can keep it? Does that mean we sit passively and wait for good things to happen? No. In order for us to keep something, we have to be actively and anxiously engaged in keeping it safe. The reason why we are in such a mess that we are, that our representation is voting to diminish our rights every chance they get, is because we do nothing. And as good men do nothing, evil arises and takes away the good things in life every time in history. Every time. We only need to look as far as the Weimar Republic. It used to be really, really good, right? Money was great. The economy was booming. But they started giving away freedom for comfort. The economy crashed. The government stepped in. We'll take care of you. And then what happened? In order for us to keep our republic, we have to be anxiously engaged. No more sitting on our laurels. No more just sitting here typing, oh, I can't believe what the hell they said on this, and posting it on our Twitter account. What good does that do? Bitching and moaning on social media is just that. Bitching. It doesn't do anything other than make the money to those high-profile accounts like those super left-wing people that are ridiculous. Every time you comment on that, it's engagement, they make money. The only people that are profiting off that are people that profiteer off of bitching. Now, you can sit there and do that, sure, whatever. It's your prerogative. Or you could use that energy and call your representation, say, what the hell are you doing? When did we accept violence in America? When did we say that was okay? We saw what happened in D.C. recently, right? The Palestine protests when Netanyahu showed up. Defacing history. When did this become acceptable? I know my parents' generation wouldn't have stood for it, and they were the hippies. I know my grandparents' generation, they would have gone down there and kicked some ass. Now, we just say, oh, I don't want to get involved. Oh, let me tweet about it. Our republic is dying. History rhymes. We are living in a very pivotal part of our republic. Now, we can choose to sit and complain on our social media accounts. Sure. We could choose to be violent and pick up torches and pitchforks and storm the Capitol. Sure. I can tell you, neither of those things are going to make a damn bit of difference. What does make a difference is you being involved. We've talked about this so many times. It starts in your house. Be involved. Be present. Be honest. If you're a parent, be a parent. Have rules. Expect those rules to be followed. Discipline when those rules don't be followed. Then hold those same standards in your neighborhood. And then your community. And then your county. And then your state. That's where your voice makes the difference. Complaining on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, that doesn't do anything. It's an echo chamber. You're screaming the same thing as everybody else thinks. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't. It might make you feel fine, sure. Maybe in some off chance, it might create some kind of an awakening, sure. Maybe, I don't know. but that's an anomaly. We are meant to be a free people. God has given us our rights, not the government. The Constitution was written as a restriction of the federal government as it implies to our lives. It is meant to be, it's not designed, the Constitution was not designed to infringe on us. It's not to stop us from being prosperous. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We should be industrious. We should be profitable. We should be sharing those profits. That's what the original republic was designed for. Yeah, but Steve, what about slavery? Those people were racists. Maybe. Maybe they were. But I do know this. I know that our Constitution was influenced by Providence. I truly believe that. That this country, the United States of America, is the freest country on earth, and it is meant to be unique, like no other country. Why do you think we have these millions of people flocking to this country? Because it used to be known to be something different, to be peculiar, to coin a phrase. We are meant to be a different people. But the only way we're going to make a difference is if we create that difference in ourselves, just like I talked about. And then we have to be courageous, because courage is contagious. As we fight for our freedoms, and hopefully not physically, but at least in the battlefield of ideas, that's where we're going to see the difference. The only way you can win in a battle of ideas is to be educated in the reality of things. There's my soapbox. I think we're going to call it good for that. I think that's going to be good enough. Hopefully this whole thing works out. I had to switch some podcasting stuff. The service I was using to distribute my podcast is no longer available. I learned that the fun way as I was trying to recover from my ailments. And I became incredibly stressed when I realized I could not publish an episode from that platform. And it was incredibly nerve-wracking for me to get it changed to a different distribution service. So this should work out. I hope so. Nonetheless, if you want to see the video, if you're just listening to the audio version of this podcast, the video version, there's my dog. I don't know if you can hear him. He agrees. The video version is going to be available on YouTube, of course, as well as Rumble. But as far as audio, it should be available anywhere your free podcasts are sold. If you want to support the show, which would be greatly appreciated, I do have a GoFundMe. You can check that out. I'll link it somewhere. There's patches available. I'm working on a better way to get those morale patches out. I ordered 2 new designs. They should be here shortly. So that'll be cool. But the original designs, I have 2 original designs. One's obviously the logo for the podcast. The other one is the Dangerous and Unusual patch, which I really like. A lot of people do. They are available now. If you're interested in supporting the show by buying a patch, that would be great. Just DM me or email me. You can find all of my socials. If you just go to the website, there's a link to all that stuff. rangemindedpodcast.com. In fact, you could even comment on there and we can figure out how to get you a patch. That would be awesome. Anyways, friends, I want you to know that I love you and I appreciate you. No matter what part of the world you live in, you can still be a patriot. You can still be a steward of the Second Amendment. That's the purpose of this show, is to create good stewardship. Be safe. Be honest. And don't forget, you got to take somebody shooting. See you guys later.